It's just so interesting that doing a documentary about our survival i- is kind of like reality television. I mean, it's it's like the most absurd lens to look at something through. Like, are we exploiting ourselves? Is that possible? Or are we sharing the reality of possible demise? I mean, I look around everything, like people, things that have been curated, things that have been gifted to us. You know, my addiction to, I always stop at the side of the road. If there's a good piece of furniture, I will always do it, much to Ronan's embarrassment. It mortifies him. And I'll say, pull over the car. There's a good chair. We can paint it black. 'Cause you can't have enough chairs.
I don't know. Let's go back to the beginning and figure it out. Shoot the whole thing. Okay. So, Tempest. How did this building come about? For me, I feel like the first word is maybe pure magic. We had incredible volunteers come to help us. We had community members. We've had, aunts, uncles, cousins, moms, friends of mom, in-laws. We've had a lot of local talent that has come and graced the stage. And it's a real source of pride for me to be able to participate in something and create something that houses the potential for people to express themselves authentically.
This Tempest has an energy, like it has community and like people who are interested in things. It's been a great place to meet new people who are as inspired and creative and working on interesting projects that isn't elsewhere. We looked.
It's not always easy to be inclusive and always aware of like the impact you're having with like every action in terms of like a production team, directorially, like choreographing, costuming, like a lot can slip through the cracks. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to support everyone and create a space that was going to be a good time for everyone in all aspects of theater.
You do enough shows and you meet enough people, you start to see who always gets sidelined or put in the background. And you start being like, that person has so much talent. Why do they keep being overlooked? What is it that's being passed over? And you notice that it's plus size people, that it's queer people, that it's people of color, that it's people who didn't have access to the resources to learn and become flourish at their art. But everybody has something that they can bring to the table. Everybody has a unique sparkle.
This place became a magical place because we started from the ground up. I mean, the training that I received in Vancouver and the training that we are able to provide here is world class. We've had students and teachers from everywhere, that offer the best in their field. And the joy of creating this place from the ground up is something that is a highlight of my life.
Hi, I'm Isaac Gilbert. I'm a city councilor for the city of Penticton. I will be speaking as a community member. We have so many stories to tell in the city of Penticton, through visual art, through theater, through music. I look at that when, I sit on my role as city council about what we can bring in and how do we support these organizations to be able to continue telling their stories, and also too to bring new people into our community. It's, one thing to have locals. We want to hear those voices. We want to have a venue for them to be loud and proud and tell their stories to our community. And also too, we also want to have other people from outside of our community tell stories too, so that we kind of evolve our stories over time.
So having an outlet for all the silly ideas and the big ideas and things you need to say and be able to do, like having a space to do that, an artistic endeavor, is hugely important for the soul.
I think art is so important because coming out of the pandemic, a lot of us realized that we were stuck on a hamster wheel, just doing the same days again and again, and just being like, why? Why am I doing this? What is the point? Where is my energy going? And having a project to pour positivity in and to build community in gives a why. It gives a focus and a joy to what can sometimes be very gray and mundane.
Art is important because it's fun.
We've been doing this for a while, hosting theatrical events, artistic events, cultural events. And it certainly strikes me that almost after every one, at least I feel a little bit different. I feel a little bit better about some of the things I'm anxious about. I feel a little bit better about my relationships in the world. And I think that has something to do with the opportunity that the arts, and in particular theater, offer for us to address things that we might be a little reluctant to address and talk about things that otherwise we might not be talking about. And so it feels like there is a connection between these opportunities, theater, the arts, artistic expression, and mental health. And so we actually did a little bit of research into it, and it turns out that there are mountains of great research exactly showing that theatrical experiences increase mental health, increase feelings of goodness, feelings of health and connection, and that other artistic experiences are similarly really good for mental health. So, I mean, there's no way to really say which art form is better than another. I don't think any is necessarily, but it seems pretty clear that the arts are a really important avenue to mental health.
Tempest has been instrumental in being like, yes, we like your idea. We will trust you with it. Go, here's the rules. Create. And it allowed Catspaw to come into being.
When we have, especially like Tempest Theatre, where you have this small little incubator where you have so much art, so many different groups that use it and tell their stories, it gives them the confidence and ability to, showcase what they have.
So when Tempest arrived in Penticton, I was moved that there was a place where people could gather and tell their stories, embodied, gathered together in the flesh, to reimagine ways of navigating our uncertain future.
Make sure that sound is going. It is.
I pitched to Jen and Ronan that it scared me to death, but if we want to, be the bravery, I wanted to tell the story about us, and with our business loan, do by the end of this year whether or not Tempest can survive, and what does that look like.
Well, and it's not a question that's unique to us. I think that's the interesting piece, is that we can sort of put ourselves under the lens and dig into this because we're living it, but it's a story that's being played out in organizations everywhere.
You often walk down the street and all of a sudden a restaurant that you loved is gone, or a gallery that you loved is gone, or a theater that you loved is gone. It's like, well, what happened? What happened to these? What happened to these places, and why are they now missing? And the interesting thing with theater is that our value is very difficult to quantify. You know, it's absolutely impossible for a black box theater to mass produce anything. Everything that we do is handcrafted, and that's why it's so meaningful.
But this touches on what I was thinking is one of the challenges of, you know, articulating and focusing even what we do, because a lot of thinking about sort of economic impacts, right, and economic drivers. Well, a lot of the economic impacts that we have are indirect in the sense that, like, you think of how many students have come through your doors that have then gone on to have careers, right? Think of how many people can have a cathartic experience that even in a subtle way, even in a small way, changes the way they see themselves. And now they go and they can function a little bit better in a way that has economic consequences. And so with the arts, and on one hand, you've got a primary driver, which is what do you get when you sell the art itself, but then there are those other secondary things that I think are really important and that are real.
There is a multiplier within the theater itself, the space, and then the people who work within it, and then it just keeps carrying out into the community, and it's so healthy.
I think that one of the things that's interesting about theater is that if you come and you experience something, often if it's done well, it's deeply personal. It's a personal connection that feels for a lot of people private. When I've I experienced plays in other theaters or directed my own, or been in it, and I've seen firsthand someone's life shift slightly, or someone who was felt very much on the fringe of something come back into the fold of a community. That theater has the power to do that. It's not easy to talk about.
Yeah, how do we find the economic support to continue to make sense and be viable?
I think one of the things that doing this documentary is going to offer us, the three of us, is to get off the hamster wheel of doing, and look at ourselves, and look at this, and look at the bigger picture.
I think of this as an opportunity to get closer to who we are and what we are, and not just the cliche of art as the thing that hangs on a wall, but the deeper part of art as an expression of our deepest human nature.
So yeah, I think there's never been a more important time for the arts to be supported than there is right now, because I think the general support levels are probably at their worst they've ever been, and art is like the most fundamental building block to community. It's the one thing that ties us together and connects us in ways that is so fundamentally important to our own personal growth and mental well-being and the strength of our social fabric. The thing I love about it is that it doesn't matter what your socioeconomic status is, you're all there together, gathered together, and you're realizing just how fundamentally important culture, art, music, theater, all these things are to the strength and the well-being of our community.
So I am a theater professor. I teach theater. Well, actually, I teach people. And I've been teaching people for about 16 years now, somewhere between the ages of about 18 and 24. And over that time, I'm noticing that we've arrived at what seems to be a mental health crisis of sorts. And I have students come to me after the last class they're taking with me, vibrating with emotion, because they're having to say goodbye, because there's no more room in their schedules to take electives, to take the theater electives. And they start weeping, and they say they feel like they're saying goodbye to a home, they're saying goodbye to their creative selves, and I think to myself, they're saying goodbye to their breathing selves.
Our expressive selves, our authentic selves, our make-believe, storytelling, playful, powerful. This part of ourselves that we're not valuing enough as a society.
It's very possible that my position will not be replaced when I retire. The body's inconvenient. It's costly to gather people together in a space. Even in the high schools, drama programs are relegated to sort of last choice electives.
All of the arts in general are being pitted against each other for what little funding and shrinking funding there is. There's certainly more people looking for less resources, and I think unless something shifts, we're going to find ourselves in a very dire situation in the next couple of years.
We are so uniquely positioned with everything we do to address so many of the things, so many of the challenges that we're facing right now. How we are in a perpetual defensive place, sort of defending our very existence and our survival. It's hard. That's hard. So, yeah, I think that theater is our oxygen and it's our way forward.
Everything she said. And everything you said.
What do you say? How are your noodles?
They're more sustaining than I thought, which is great because they're inexpensive.
See, that's profound.
I regularly play through in my mind the various stories that people share with me about their experiences interacting with art or an artist or the process of, the witnessing of. And it's impossible for me to imagine not being connected to a world where people are creating and being buoyed by and supported and mentored by art and creation. I mean, there's lots of people in the world who don't have that proximity and that adjacency to this process. And I can't imagine what that feels like to not get to participate in that spark, whether you're witnessing or doing it yourself. Like, what an impoverished feeling that seems to me. There's just so much heart and soul and expression and exploration and that can be done in a space like this, or in the space that you make to have an experience like happens in spaces like this. You can be so wealthy.
What do you know of witchcraft? Of witches? We've all heard the stories, have we not? Heard of them in song, or perhaps at their den of sin and iniquity, the theatre.
The crux of the work centered on the fact that ideas about witchcraft have been used to oppress women and others and crush the spirits and bodies of those who challenged patriarchy. It's not a stretch to see how these dangerous narratives continue to play out, so.
Of helpful women. By day who offer advice on crops, or love, health. But by night, these women take their brooms and smeared with an unctuous paste, and with these wooden beams clutched betwixt their trembling thighs, they soar across the sky to witches' sabbaths there to consort with unclean spirits of incubi and succubi.
Witches are symbols of our worst fears, but witches don't really exist. These were and are people, mostly women and freethinkers, who were persecuted for reasons as trivial as age, marital status, economic status, or nonconformity. Men made up these stories of women murdering babies, stealing penises, flying on broomsticks, causing natural disasters, inspiring infidelities, and much more, which is often surfaced when something inexplicable and terrible happened and people made up conspiracy theories to try and explain it. They tried to clean up the truth by avoiding it altogether. As an example of the inspiration that came from the company, the actors I chose to embody witches 1, 2, and 3 from Macbeth are trans, non-binary, and queer.
Being someone who is othered, being a queer person.
Clearly, this woman is possessed! She!
They!
Who?
They, them.
Who? Whom?
We all felt deeply telling these stories and hearing these stories.
I would say transformative is definitely a choice word in this whole experience. Day one was just like, take that shell and throw it away. And it was such a liberating, freeing experience.
How are we allowing each other to grow or not? And it's such a great experience to get to grow. And that's what I think theater helps remind us, is like we're about growing. We're humans being, not just doing.
Tempest itself in an entity has become a beacon of light for me, and a home away from home, and a community that is so dear to my heart.
I'm changed again. Every time I come into this theater to do a show, I never leave the same. I'm always changed. And so this one, I'm just like,
I'll sit off here. Hurts to not get this. And this one. So. You know, I think that the intention of the COVID recovery supports, such as the $60,000 grants, was to help cover that period of time while everybody recalibrated or just needed to hold in place until things sort of stabilized and normalized. But, you know, in the space that we inhabit in the theater, there was such hesitancy for people to return to the theater, to return to creativity in this kind of way or being an audience in this kind of way, that the supports didn't last long enough for us to keep things up and running. And now it has the potential to actually capsize us as we get closer to this deadline to repay the grant. You know, we're months away now, and a required $40,000 we need to pull out of the thin air.
So, yeah, today is like mojo deficit. Hard to come here. Hard. So didn't want to. Feel like, I mean, we're doing all these grants and everything seems to be going forward except me. My body didn't want to be here. And we're auditioning today. It's huge. All these hopeful, happy actors. And I don't know what. I feel like there's rocks in my pockets. And generally I bounce back up, right? But it hasn't happened. And it's scary. I want my mojo, but I don't. If it doesn't come back, I don't know if I can do it. And it's shocking. Because it always comes back. But since Black Box Theater always has a lot of Kleenex. Ever since I paid the $40,000 for the loan, I haven't bounced back. And in my mind, it's like there's nothing more worth it. But my body's going, you can't fix this.
It's tough because I'm an optimist by nature, right? So it's tough to get me into situations that I feel too dire about. I mean, there's always a way to figure some things out. And I remain optimistic now. I think we're learning a lot, we're seeing a lot, and it's up to us to, pick up those messages as we can, learn where we can, and continue forward. I mean, this isn't a hobby for us. It's not a speculative business for us. It's our lives. It's the very substance of our lives. And there isn't an off-ramp.
I worry about you both. I worry about this holding up of this space for all of this to happen, and that responsibility sitting on your shoulders. It's hard to think about how heavy that must feel. I think inherently art will continue to be made no matter what. Creators can't help themselves. Paul mentioned it from the art gallery, talking about how creators will always find a way to create, and it's almost a self-defeating situation sometimes. But I think it's so important to have space to do it in that has freedom attached to it. I just struggle with the fact that the responsibility has to sit on individuals.
I'm reminded a little bit, like when I was younger, I read Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. And one of the more famous passages from that book really struck me. And at the time, I didn't realize it was a famous passage. It just kind of haunted me, which was the idea of we live as we dream alone. And thinking about that aloneness of life, it's a haunting thought. But what occurs to me now is that is absolutely not true. We don't live alone. The thing that connects us, though, is communication. When we communicate together, we form bonds together, we understand each other, we understand our world better. And it seems to me that there are, I think 3 significant modes of communication, right? One is your actions, what you do communicates to everyone around you. And then there's, words you can speak. And then the third piece is art. And it seems to me, again, that art as a connective communication medium, once you begin to get your feet into that, you don't pull your feet out. Like looking at the scarcity of grant funding against the volume of applicants makes me sort of think about how many people are anxious to communicate and to reach out and to try to build these connections.
So recently I was contacted by a student I taught many, 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 many years ago. His name is Marty Hallett. He said there was a group of old students of mine that were wanting to travel to the Okanagan for an acting intensive. We've had lots of visits from actors and colleagues since we opened in 2019, just months before the whole world shut down. Great time to open. Anyway, they're not traveling all this way for an acting class. It's like, instead of hold my beer, it's like, please hold space where I can abandon prescribed identities, expectations, and limitations. If this was a fantasy world, we'd be like the
oh, what do you call them? The mist-born sword bearers protecting the mystical, magical, playful part of ourselves. And that's what we do. So of course I said yes. And then I recruited Denise Kenny, of course, and Kelly Trebasket to help me set up for the intensive with our welcoming speech. My first question is, who are we and why are we here? I mean, it's something that we really need to consider. A lot of you have come a long way. I don't know about any of you, but I always feel like before an intensive, I always feel like, oh God, I hope I just end up in the hospital. Right? I do. And why? Because it's hard, right? And so the logical part of you says, no, we don't walk into hard. We run away from hard. We walk into easy. So why are you here walking into hard? And that's not an easy answer. And I have deep respect for each and every one of you that have decided to do so. So much so that we want to support that. We want to give our love and our time and our energy and our wisdom to talk about why we tell stories and how important it is.
So I'm Kelly Trebasket, and I am Seal. I am also mixed heritage, German and English, and I see myself as a bridge maker. I run a program called Indigenize, which is medicine for relationships. Yeah, I remember my first time coming to an intensive, and I felt the sacredness of this work. I was surprised by the sacredness of it. I've been to a lot of ceremonies in my life, and this journey felt very ceremonial, especially when I think of the four walls and the opportunity to share stories that are marginalized.
Really, when you watch great performance, usually that's one of the, in my mind when I'm watching, is the defining factor. Nobody's looking at Kate, nobody's looking at Denise, they're always looking at whatever this is between us or between the three of us. That's what we are hardwired as animals. Our instincts to pay attention to is relational aesthetics.
Hello, world. We're actors. We're the opposite of people.
Did I do it right? I needed that, thanks.
You know, why are we all doing it? Why are we all taking this time off of work and families and everything to do this thing? And it's like, oh yeah, I felt this like theater-sized hole in my heart. And like, that was the thing that was missing for years. And it was just like, I was lucky enough to, get a couple of gigs here and there, but I'm like, it doesn't matter if it's not like filling that void and giving you that feeling of play and joy and expression and all those things that come with theater. And we got to do that this week a little bit.
It was super fun. I keep finding myself coming back to her Black Box Theater because it's a place to experience like awe. That was one thing in this last intensive that I realized was I think it's a very challenging time to be a creative or an artist right now. I think everything is very confused, and I feel like that confusion has been a fog on just a sense of awe.
My name is Marty Hallett. I'm an actor, and I'm here because Kate moved here from Vancouver, and so we had to follow her. If she had stayed in Vancouver, we would have not had to drive for 4 hours.
Naughty.
So this was really an opportunity to come back to myself and to feel again. It was so fun. And hard, yeah.
That's why we do it. Because otherwise, we're just alone.
Really sad now. Sorry.
Tempest is a special, but something I noticed yesterday that I never really noticed, but like the fact that the booth, which is also the office,
there, it's such
which also like looks down onto the stage. So you can like sit there with all your research and then look at like what's gonna go down there. Like this, I can just look at the thing, like let's imagine all the things right in front of me. That's gonna be right there from here to there.
And that's what this beautiful magical space represents for me. Is it was the most magical place for me to connect to every aspect of myself. And I watched everyone else do that on stage as well.
Looking at our relationship to art is looking at a wider and deeper variety of our own aspects, and it looks at ourselves and why wouldn't we want to learn as much as we can about ourselves and express as much as we can about ourselves.
I just started to find such freedom and power and permission.
It's like the glue that holds a unit together, and sometimes it's taken for granted, and sometimes it feels invisible. But without it, little aspects of it start to crumble. And I guess growing up here, I think there's so much beauty in our natural resources and our outdoors, and why people come to the Okanagan. And I'm curious, and I ask myself, like, so where are we going next? What as a society are we valuing besides the achievement-oriented function of a society? Like, where are we investing in the fabric of our relationships?
I think as people tend to shrink their ideas of what the arts are, they also shrink their own experiences in the world. When people limit the idea of what arts are or what arts can be, they limit their own experiences in the world.
It's like there's a old cartoon, Felix the Cat, and there was a character named Vavoom, and it was like this little mouse. And so like Felix, they would be like driving in the little car or whatever, and then all of a sudden there'd be a giant boulder in the road. And Felix would be like, okay, Vavoom. And the little mouse would like hop up, and then he would go, Vavoom! And the boulder would break apart and fly apart and get out of the way, and the mouse would get back in the car and drive away. And so anyways, I found my Vavoom, you know, like I realized that I had this power inside of me, and you know, and so that absolutely influenced when I got involved in voiceover, which I've been very blessed to be successful in. You know, once I found that and found that access to my tool, I realized that was how I could take, if I needed to take space, if I needed to project size, then I had that power.
So a few months ago, I was offered a full-time job with the Economic Development Agency with the federal government. They're called Pacifican, and it's work that I've been doing for a long time in different capacities and never at that particular level. And it was a really difficult decision to make. On the one hand, it's work I know and love and I believe in, and the team looks amazing, and it's stability, which my family needs. But it means that I have to find a way to step out of the day-to-day and this vision of building Tempest into what we hope it can be. And it feels like it's a very critical time to have to step out and I'm not going to shake the feeling that somehow I'm jumping ship.
It's tough not to feel a little bit dark in moments like this.
You're the eternal optimist.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I still see, like, it makes me sad, for example, that something that's this meaningful and this important doesn't catch more of the attention.
I think that the community has been very loud about its appreciation of us. The community has, but it's a society problem. It's a support.
Yeah.
You know, like, listen to your community. How many times do you have to scream and say, this is what our community needs in order to avoid these crises? You know, and it's like, oh, go away, you frivolous little art house. And you're going, let them in. Let's give them these tools. It just makes you go, why bother? And that's where I'm at right now. Why bother?
I initially contact Tempest Theatre because I live in Penticton and I know about them. I know the job they do, and it's quite inspiring to see what they do. And I always thought that it would be super cool to have kind of a joint project with them where we can bring the arts of winemaking and the art of theater together and be creative and do something different.
So this is Tempest's first time doing immersive theater, but it's not Denise's first time. In fact, that's kind of what she does and what she loves. So it was a no-brainer to partner with a lot of brave actors and create this. You know, like it's kind of like immersive theater feels to me like it's like water. It can just kind of mold into anything. That's the experience that I've had. How about you?
Well, I mean, it's really about the space, really dictates what you end up doing, and about just creating these cool moments. So the audience really does go on more of an adventure. It's a very different kind of performance. You're creating magical moments. Using the space, using poetry, performance.
One of the things that I noticed, like in the performance, watching the audiences, that I'm so tickled by, is how the audience is just kind of like childlike. They just they find their inner child, and they allow themselves to break these confines and actually play with the artists. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that's the intention?
Yeah, I think when you go to a regular theater, it's a sanctioned cultural space. We know the rules. We know what's expected of us. There's this sense of sort of, I'm going to go and I'm going to consume some theater, some art. I'm going to sit in my seat. Whereas when you come to something like this, there's more asked of the audience, right? They don't necessarily know what it is. With this, it's really cool because the sensation of the wines, like the sensory experience of the wine, just adds so much. Like, you could see people like sipping their wine and then just,
engaging their imagination.
And like, my monologue really encourages them to play in the imaginary. And I had I continue to have lots of people come up and play with me. My lips are sealed and the confessions, because we have a confession wine tank.
It's a big tank for a lot of confessions.
Yeah. I am a mysterious cocktail of human passions. But aren't we all? Really? Aren't we all mysterious cocktails of human passions, potions of passions, potent passion potions? And this evening, we're gonna let them out.
George Bernard Shaw said, "We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing." One thing I noticed while working on this documentary is how difficult it is to describe what we do and how it makes us feel. But difficulty describing something doesn't mean it isn't real. It's not that there isn't an answer. It's just that it can't fit into words. That recipe includes gut feelings, instinct, intuition, love, critical thinking, all the things that make us less likely to fall in line. In black box theater, there's nothing but possibility. Tiny phenomena that sprout from the imagination. And the exciting part is that in order to experience art, you need to engage with your own inner artist. There's a New York Times article with the headline, "How to Save a Sad, Lonely, Mean, and Angry Society" by David Brooks. Among the many insights in this really, really good article, he maintains that engaging culture is a way to deepen your emotional knowledge. Emotional knowledge. That makes me feel really smart.
Okay, so I have every third Friday and some weekends.